also have the 3 mountaineers. Okay, cool. Oh, I see, we have these buttons too. Okay. So these are the police forces, aka cavalry. Which I'm actually sorely tempted to just disband. Oh no, we actually have a surplus of equipment, so we may not need to. Because the garrison forces should get first dibs on everything. Then let's have our artillery units. And then our infantry, I'm just going to spread out because I don't know that anything bad is going to happen. In fact, I don't think it will. We are the Ottoman Empire. We are mighty. Or something like that. So I'm just going to stick these guys on general garrison duty for the time being. That seems to be a DMZ. Oh, and Germany doesn't own Suez anymore. Well, that's a bit of a change. What do you mean it's unpaused? It's totally paused. I mean, unpaused now. Now it is! After I saw your comment going, why is it not unpaused yet? In fact, it wasn't. It was just saying, I quite like it being unpaused. Slower pace of gameplay. I had a lot to learn and also, you know, just coming back from my break and everything. Okay, so... The Ottoman Empire, once one of the greatest empires in history, saw its decline commence in the late 18th century, developing to a point of being known as the sick man of Europe by the early 20th century. An inability to effectively industrialise, constant foreign meddling in its affairs, and a troubling hold on a lot of its provinces meant that the Ottoman Sultanate had fallen well behind the European powers by 1876. Nevertheless, the Ottomans reformed, and despite the issues there posed on a local level, where tribal issues and a corrupt bureaucracy reigned supreme, light could be seen. Prompted by Mahmud III in the early 19th century and further pursued by the young Ottomans, radical changes were introduced in the empire. Land ownership was restructured, the Janissaries eradicated, central rule re-established in regions such as Mosul and Al-Horsa, and a constitution promulgated. The focus of these reformers was based on the idea of Ottomanism and attempted to foster a common identity for all of the inhabitants besides their local one. It would not be enough. With Abdulhamid II's rise to power, a change would come once more. Under the pretext of the Russo-Turkish War, the constitution was abolished and parliament sent packing. This period saw a radical centralisation of power under the figure of Sultan Khalif. With a constant threat by the Christian powers, the Sultan turned towards pan-Islamism based on the prestige of the Caliphate. Despite enjoying great successes with the Muslim population, this would only further hasten the departure from the territories without these. Furthermore, his absolute rule fostered great discontent amongst a population with increasingly familiar with Western ideas. This resistance would consolidate itself in the shape of the Committee of Union and Progress. A coup d'etat in 1908 made the Ottoman politics, long suppressed by the Sultan, burst out into the open. Dozens of the parties would attempt to find a seat within the newly restored parliament, as it seemed the Ottoman decline was finally at its end. The United Democratic Forces would not last. It quickly saw a split between the decentralists and the centralists. Through a tumultuous 5 years, those two sides would battle for control. In 1913, with the raid on the Sublime Porte, the game was up. The centralists, with significant public figures of the three pashas, would eradicate all remaining power of the decentralists and shape the nation in their image. Under great threat by the imperialists, they ultimately strengthened ties with Germany. Wall of text is super effective. Too long, didn't read. Hey, prompt commander. Well, I am going to read it, because I quite like these. Interesting. The Ottoman Empire officially entered the Weltkrieg on October 29, 1914, with the arrival of Wilhelm Suchon and the Goeben and Breslau and the shelling of Odessa. The Ottomans won several significant victories in the early years of the war, such as the Battle of Gallipoli and the Siege of Kut, but there were setbacks as well, such as the disastrous Caucasus campaign against the Russians. Disaster continued in 1916 with the start of the Arab Revolt, combined with a new British offensive under the command of General Edmund Allenby. Coming to a head in 1918, devastating defeats in Palestine led to a mass retreat of the Ottoman forces. Jerusalem, Damascus and Aleppo fell in quick succession, as only the controversial decision by the commander of the Sixth Army to withdraw into the mountains of Anatolia was able to stop the chain reaction. A valiant defeat at Antep and the Pyrrhic victory near Maras ultimately stopped Allenby in his tracks. At that point, the atmosphere of the empire was rapidly changing, as the Ottoman government realised that even a victory would come at a cost. Furthermore, a change happened in the palace as well. The CUP puppet Mehmet V passed away, and in his wake followed the far more assertive Vahdettin. Seeing the collapse of his empire on all fronts, with the CUP government held responsible for the disaster, he would lash out and attempt to shift power to his allies in the HIF. With the ground heating up under their feet, Talsat Pasha would then, at the instigation of Cemal Pasha, attempt to shut down the Sultan. Harsh famine in Istanbul drove, due to the refusal by German forces to supply it with Ukrainian grain, rumours that the commander of the Sixth Army was in open conflict with the Ministry of War would finally tip the bucket over. In a massive wave of anti-German pacifist fervour, the cabinet of Talat Pasha was forced to resign and concede to the Sultan. Ahmet Teflik Pasha was appointed the Grand Vizier and tasked with the creation of a government of national unity. Under pressure from the CUP, whose unwillingness to lift their grasp on power made the negotiations collapse, Ahmet Teflik Pasha resigned and was replaced by Ahmed Izzet Pasha, creating a government consisting of Kavit Bey, Fethi Pasha and Rauf Pasha. It quickly became clear that the CUP was far from defeated. Well, yeah, TNO has a lot of reading and a lot of text, but it is more spread out in just, here's all the stuff that happened up until this point. Now, this could potentially be better done through focuses, rather than just lore dumping. The fall of Greece and the growing risk of revolution in the British Protectorate of Egypt caused Allenby to revise his strategy and withdraw part of his forces. As France collapsed in 1919, the war entered its closing stages. In contrast with the Western Front, however, where Austrian forces pushed into Italy and the Germans into France and Belgium, the Ottomans at this vital moment had lost over half of their empire, either occupied or readily vulnerable to a concerted British attack, and were held up by the British force, ultimately unlikely to stand down. Sultan Vahdettin opened negotiations with the British in an attempt to salvage what remained of his empire, whilst Britain reconsidered its attitude in the Middle East. With the Treaty of Copenhagen ceasefire later that year, demanding immediate withdrawal of all remaining Entente forces from the territory of the Central Powers, a rapid solution for the Eastern question was necessary. Further trouble for British in Egypt, Afghanistan, occupied Iraq ultimately forced their hand, and the order was given to withdraw. Only Palestine and the Vilayet of Basra would remain under the occupation of the insistence of Jan Smuts and Leo Amory, until an acceptable treaty was reached surrounding the rights of the minorities, masking their intentions of an Indian base in Iraq and a fortified position near the Suez. With uncertainty in the political climate of the Ottoman Empire, the punishment for the perpetrators of the Armenian massacres far from likely, international opinion shifted away from the empire, losing much of its support from the Central Powers. An accord was reached in the summer of 1920, wherein two autonomous regions were established, to the great anger of both the Turks and the Arabs. The Mustafirate of Jerusalem, the MOJ, was created in Palestine, stretching from the Allenby line to the Red Sea. This de jure part of the Ottoman Empire was to be governed by an international council consisting of the German Empire, the British Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the USA, and the Ottomans themselves. Forbidding the entry of the Ottoman troops, an international gendarmerie force would maintain the peace within Palestine. In the Vilayet of Basra, a new home was to be created for the Assyrian people, whose exodus from the plains of Nineveh and Lake Umia had left them refugees in an Iran openly hostile to their ambitions. and we're only up to 1921. As the formal peace finally arrived in 1921, the borders of the Ottoman Empire had largely remained the same. The oblasts of Kars and Kardan were recovered in the addition to Yerevan, whilst the Italians pushed out of the Dodecanese. The damage had been immense, however, as through the actions of the CEP, especially Cemal Pasha, tensions between the Turks and the Arabs had burst into the open, while in eastern Anatolia and Mount Lebanon, where whole populations were eradicated either through forced deportation or starvation. Losses on the Turkish side had been colossal as well, leading to underpopulation and a sharp decline in the agricultural output, the empire's main source of income. Although the Arab revolt had been a colossal failure, the need for reform was recognised, answering the Arab Congress in 1913. The Arabic language was recognised as the second language of the empire. Increasing factionalism within the CEP and the meteoric rise of many military figures tore away the internal stability of the party. The betrayal by its German allies in Palestine gave rise to a substantial anti-German faction. As public opinion of the party declined ever further, the CEP changed its name to Tesadut and openly ousted some of the dictatorial figures within. Cemal Pasha went packing while the Talist influence was greatly reduced. Working from his position as the Minister of War, Mustafa Kemal Pasha ousted the German military mission and commenced an ambitious military restructuring, receiving great acclaim for his actions. Kemal continued laying the foundations of his rise to power, fearing another Enver Pasha. The upper committee of the party pushed Kavit Bey forward as its leader. Incapable of successfully challenging him, Kemal made a successful bid for power in 1925. The party changed name a second time to the Ottoman People's Party. The Ottomans didn't win, they were just on the they were on the winning side, but really lost. Yeah, kind of. The 1926 elections ended in a victory of the OHF, but many were quick to remark that this was less due to the party itself and more due to the fragmentation of the opposition, where more than a dozen parties fought for any given seat. The newly appointed Grand Vizier did not hide his ambitions, and in a flurry of reforms, he pushed the nation towards his ideals. Massive strides were undertaken in the areas of education, economic recovery, and the fight against the religious establishment. The authoritarian style of the Grand Vizier, however, led to a further splintering within the party, when his former ally and friend Kazim Kazabek Pasha broke with the party and created his Democratic Party. Under threat by the rapid centralisation of the government apparatus, with many conservatives afraid that the OHF may be attempting to break with tradition, the 1931 elections ended the first electoral defeat of the OHF. The Ottoman Party for the Administrative Decentralisation, under its leader Haki al-Azm, became the grand winner of the elections and formed a coalition with the HIF and the DF to provide a united front against the growing centralist threat. The coalition, however, was under constant attack as the various parties that played part of it had... Who the hell are these different acronyms? I have no idea. Like, how is the OHF different from the HIF versus the DF? To provide a united front against the growing centralist threat. So who are the centrists? I'm completely lost. Actually, we have a way of working that out. So the OHF are the authoritarian Democrats. These are the Ottoman People's Party, which is, I thought, Kemal Ataturk. Apparently not. The Ottoman Salutation Party is the SIF, which have not appeared here. Then we have the OHF, which is these guys. And these are actually the ones in power right now. Okay. Then we have the DF, which is these guys who are the market liberals. So these are the Democrats. Then the HIF are the social liberals, who are slightly more left-leaning. Freedom and Accord Party. Okay. Answered. The coalition, however, was under constant attack, as the various parties played a part of it, conflicting opinions on a non-OHF policy. Tensions reached a breaking point in late 1932, where the government of Haki al-Azam collapsed due to the disagreements with the HIF and the DFA. A new government was created under the HIF leadership, which are the social liberals, but its minority government failed in achieving its goals of decentralization and liberalization. The continued failures by his coalition went a long way in repairing the reputation of the OHF, which received a solid majority in the 1935 elections. As Grand Vizier, Mustafa Kemal Pasha begins his second term in office. Signs have started to appear he may be looking for an alternative to the constant obstruction by the Ottoman Chamber of Deputies and interference of the conservative lobby through the Caliph. So he is in charge. Okay. That's it? But we still have 4 more years. I feel robbed. The OHF are the centralists, the DF and the HIF are the decentralists. Gotcha. Not enough lore. How am I supposed to get into the game if all the parties' individual histories going all the way back to the Ghaznavids are not explained in full detail? I know, right? I demand another paragraph. There you go. You get another paragraph. Congratulations. The Ottoman economy in 1936, the aftermath of the infamous decade. When the dust settled in 1920 and there finally came an end to almost a decade of non-stop war, the economy of the Ottoman Empire lay in tatters. The manufacturing economy, which had been slow but steady growth in the CUP era... Wait, who are the CUP? No idea. Was knocked down as the effects of the Armenian genocide took their toll on the educated middle class. Doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, etc. all became critical jobs as the continued exodus by the Greek Ottoman citizens in Asia Minor showed how devastating the national economy plan was to the ravaged nation. In a similar way, the agricultural sector was ruined as the real effects of the war started to sink in. The loss of the Anatolian Turkish population was mind-boggling, as almost 25% of the pre-war population was gone, leaving behind an abundance of land without the manpower to work it. Nonetheless, the Sublime Porte did not sit idle, and plans for a swift recovery were quickly drafted. As the first post-war cabinet made it their number one priority, railroads left behind by investors of nations no longer existing were nationalised. The dreaded OPDA was completely shut down and its monopolies transferred over to the state. The National Economy Programme became the number one priority of the Ottoman government, as the horrors of the war and the reliance on the untrustworthy non-Turkish population left deep scars amongst the ruling elite. A Muslim bourgeoisie had to be groomed to challenge the traditional Christian dominance, as the people educated in the empire finally launched in the 20th century. Grand plans, but little resources. As the years ticked by and the economy reached its pre-war state by the late 20s, the then ruling OHF, which is Pasha's, Kemal's group, took development to the next level as a sequence of the 4-year plans were laid to the table and the hold of the government and the economy was tightened ever further. Then, in 1931, the unthinkable happened. The nationalist coalition was decisively brought down by the Liberal Entente, who reopened the economy to foreign investment and toned down the etatist measures so carefully crafted in the decade before. Nonetheless, the economy kept expanding as industry popped up all across Anatolia and the Levant, financed by the almost never-ending wave of economic prosperity in the German Empire and the low import costs for machinery and building materials. Huzzah! By the middle of the 1930s, the Turkish economy had never seen better days, as a feeling of euphoria and progress could be felt from Beirut to Smyrna. Smyrna. Is that Syria? I don't know. Nonetheless, many pointed out warning signs on the horizon, as increasing instability on the continent and the stagnation of the German economy will likely bring issues to the Grand Orient as well. Praise the Devlet I Ebet Mudlet, eternal state. Huzzah. But if he just lost power, then we still have another election still to come, right? Izmir, okay. Which is... Oh, there it is. Yay! I actually knew where that was. God, oh, what? Kerensky has just been shot and killed while on his way to the Senate. The assailant was taken down by police, but the goals and intentions of the attack are unknown. Despite his massive unpopularity amongst the Russian people due to the botched land reform and ineffective rule, Kerensky was nevertheless able to hold the country together for years, and his death has thrown Russia into chaos. The senators are already discussing a possible replacement for Kerensky. New coalitions are being formed between both the left and the right, while military men like Wrangel, Huzzah, and Kornilov are just one step away from intervening to dissolve democracy and save Mother Russia. We don't have control over Georgia, though. No, it's definitely this, because it even has the same name. There are two certainties in life, taxes and President Kerensky's death. Right, the other thing which I know I have been blanking out because I don't have that as a pop-up right now is the drink teas. And we have a bunch of them, and I'm kind of thirsty because, wow, my throat's hurting. Like, coming back from several days off to suddenly needing to read half a novel does a bit of a number. So, where are they? Drink tea, Kakakojo. Galenus. Arthur. Just Jack. Silver Knight. Wow, we are going through this tea super quickly. And Just Jack has come in with a 2-month Prime resubscription. Thank you very much for the ongoing support there, Just Jack. Very much appreciate that. And Damn Fluger and... Nope, just Damn Fluger. Thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the channel. Good to have you joining us. Oh, and Darkstar. I'm so sorry I missed your 2-month resubscription as well. Always so satisfying to watch you run Hard to Find 4, maybe host another multiplayer in the near future. I am not hosting any other multiplayers. I have no interest in doing that. It's always a pain. However, while we're talking about multiplayer, there is actually going to be the continuation of... Well, not the continuation... The second phase of the multiplayer game between Kaiserreich Weekly and the Heart of Iron 4 Discord. That is occurring tomorrow at 5 PM GMT. That is going to be Kaiserreich. So last week it was the vanilla game which favoured the Heart of Iron 4 Discord. Tomorrow is going to be Kaiserreich, which obviously Kaiserreich Weekly is like home ground. So Kaiserreich Weekly versus Heart of Iron 4 multiplayer of Kaiserreich tomorrow here on this channel, 5 PM GMT. I'll be commentating just like before. Kaiserreich, as we know, does take a bit longer, so this is going to be a 2-day thing. So it's going to be Saturday and also Sunday. So there is a lot of multiplayer to come, which should be very interesting. And Alexander wants me to drink some tea as well. Sindrin, what do you call a maternal Turkish robot water weasel? An Ottoman automatron. An Ottoman automatron. There we go. I can say that more quickly now. Can you see the ships? Yes. I mean, what we were doing with the ships was gathering them together. They are still gathering. Resources. Loads and loads of chromium. We are in Anatolia. Huzzah! A shortage of steel, a shortage of tungsten, and basically we have two things. Chromium and oil. So, super heavy battleships it is. Hey, Marshall, coming in with a 23-month resubscription. Just one more month. And then you can earn those lovely orange wings. And also, I think you're the, third, fourth moderator to resubscribe today as well. Thank you very much for all the work that you put in, Marshall. You are really my right-hand man. You and Bamboozle make everything else happen. So thank you very, very much for the work that you're doing, Marshall. It is massively appreciated. And it's always really nice seeing you around, so thank you for that. You see, when Mordred takes a well-deserved 3 days off, tons and tons of resubs coming through. Yeah. Kornilov storms Moscow, taking advantage of the chaos in Moscow after the assassination of Kerensky. Lavia Kornilov and his officers, with the help of the combat squads of the Boris Savinkov's NRPR, took to the streets of Moscow to fight off the leftist organizations, the trade unionists. After hours of bloody street fighting, Kornilov took full control of Moscow and was sworn in as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief and President of Russia. Hope you enjoyed your time off. I did. I needed it. Probably more than I realized. Yeah, I needed it. But it was good. I spent the first 2 days just playing Wasteland 3. I did nothing else except get up like 4 or 5 hours later than I usually do. Had a hell of a lay-in. Like pretty much every day. It was awesome. Then yesterday and Wednesday I spent working on a new D&D campaign and also the store. So one of the things which I think now be able to announce is I'm going to be starting a D&D game here on the channel Sunday evenings. Unfortunately, Europe, I'm very sorry, but it starts at midnight on Sunday, so Monday morning. Because I play with Americans. Like, my usual D&D crew is American. But we've made the decision that we're actually going to start streaming that. I'm taking my turn as the DM. So, yeah, D&D is coming to the channel. I'm very curious to see how that's going to work. Because it's something new. And I know that there is a lot of interest in D&D as well. So, we're going to try it. And we're doing the Icewind Dale module. Unfortunately, like, I used to always do D&D with my own custom campaigns. I freaking love building custom campaigns. I am a world builder by trade. That is like the game design role. I built worlds. So creating settings for D&D was my absolute joy, and I love doing it. I just don't have time for it anymore. So depending on how Icewind does, what I might do in the future, so if it does pretty well for like the first couple of episodes, then I might start a D&D world building stream where we'll build a world together, and I'll kind of show you how I did it, and then also take ideas from you guys, because you guys are pretty creative, and we'll start like working towards the next campaign, which will then be custom based in that world. It's something which Midgeman has been doing, and I think has worked really well. So that is my idea at the moment, but the next campaign is going to be Icewind Dale. Oh boy, a chat-created world sounds interesting. Well, it would be my setting, it would be my world, but with ideas taken from you guys. So if I say, like, I need an idea for a national government based within these parameters, then you can give me some ideas, or like names and things like that. That would be the type of thing I'll draw. I'll be disappointed if you do not make snide elf comments during the D&D campaign. Oh, they will be coming in thick and fast. Saw the last stream of Midgeman's stream, was really interesting to watch. Yeah, I really like what Midge was doing with that. I think it was a really good idea. Because definitely, like, the biggest time sink in DMing a campaign is the preparation. And while I wouldn't necessarily stream the actual prep for the campaign itself, though that it could also be interesting, but I think less so, the world building I think would be. And also it would serve to, like, introduce chat to the setting, and also to like everything that's kind of going on politically and strategically, whereas the party themselves would be on like the lower tier. But like I said, that's not going to be for a long time, probably months in the future, if we even do it. It really depends on how the D&D streams go. I know it's in a kind of an awkward spot. That's just when we usually play. If this does well on the Sunday night, then we may well try to get a more primetime slot going. But again, I have to make time for my players. They all have full-time jobs. They all are based in Michigan. So, yeah. And Marshall, you may well know a couple of them, actually.